She is a social impact influencer, the author of Magnificent Kids and Get Off the Bench, an international speaker, a leadership facilitator, and Get Off the Bench podcast host. She is also the co-founder of Girls with Hammers, which hosts events to empower and connect women, and is the founder of One Planet Classrooms, a non-profit providing clean water solutions and empowerment programs in Africa. She also works with emerging leaders to help them create leadership positioning through her program, Elevate Your Genius. I am honored to welcome Kerryn Vaughan.
Hey, how are you?
Hi, Kerryn.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here. All right, fantastic. Well, I'm going to talk today about Get Off the Bench, and I'm kind of going to take a bit more of an entrepreneurial look rather than a podcast look. But what I have a Get Off the Bench podcast, and that has been a result of a whole lot of twists and turns. And, I hear a lot of people saying to me when I'm doing Get Off the Bench is, yeah, I'd love to do a podcast, but I just don't have no one wants to hear my voice. I don't know how to start. I don't know what to do, and I keep saying, well, have you got a message? Have you got stuff to share? Yeah. Well, then the world needs to hear your voice. So what I want to do today is at the very end of it, I want to sort of give you just a little bit of a mini Get Off the Bench. So if you're thinking about doing a podcast, there's a few steps that you can take, but it's also not just about podcasts. It's about if you want to set up a side hustle or if you want to do something in your life. But I think that, a lot of people are thinking that podcast hosts or entrepreneurs, anything like that, I think a lot of people think that they just are overnight successes, that they pop out of the blue and they're great, but I'm not. And this is a really common mistake that a lot of people make, is that I'm a nobody and they're a somebody. Now, I just want to myth bust that completely, that every single person is relevant, every single person is worthy, every single person is magnificent, and we've all got something to share, and we've all got an audience that actually wants to hear us. So what I want to do, just to sort of, cement that idea, is I want to give you a look at my journey and just to see how it went for me, and to prove to you that there are so many ups and downs and things take a long time. And for me, I had a catalyst in my life. You don't need to wait for a catalyst. Some people say, oh, this bad thing happened, and then they start their career based on that, or they take a twist in the road and go from there. I say don't wait for adversity. If there's something that you want to do, you just go get it done now. Get off the bench. So Get Off the Bench started as a book, and it was in 2019, I was just speaking at a conference, and the guy there asked me to run a workshop on kickstarting projects. I kind of laughed at him and said, well, I don't know anything about kickstarting projects. And then he said, oh, hang on, look at everything you've achieved. And so I thought, yeah, I do actually. So I did the workshop, and then I said, I'll send you a PDF, and it ended up being a book. So Get Off the Bench is my second book, and the first book was Magnificent Kids. And something that really important to me is that I guess I get up every day to unlock the magnificence in every single person. And by the way, I want to just go back onto that bit about whether you think you've got a voice or not. I'm working with a group in Florida, a group of young adults with autism, and they are setting up podcasts. And, when they started, they were like, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to say, and that. But last week I heard them give their spiel, give their intro, it's kind of like a trailer, and wow, and that was magnificent. So one thing I'm going to say we Get Off the Bench is just start, just actually get going, and you'll be surprised how quickly you get there. But let me go back to my journey. So basically it was like I was a rock star, living a rock star life. I thought that I was the center of the world, very egotistical, and of course I've got cheering fans, and I just thought that the world revolved around me. And that came crashing to a massive halt in my 30s when I got a phone call. I was at a gig and I got a phone call, and one of my sisters telling me that she had cancer. And so at that point, I hadn't bothered to look at many people past me. I was very selfish. And, I saw the D word for death. I didn't see C for maybe there's a cure, And that sort of led on to this 5-year journey of me being the oldest in the family. I tried to save her life, but I failed. And of course I didn't fail. Of course, cancer is indiscriminate and it takes people. But me being the oldest and thinking that I needed to protect my family, I saw that as a failure. So I kind of hid from the world. I still did singing, but it wasn't the same anymore. And I went to work in a nursery in a garden centre, and I thought I could hide behind the plants and grieve. And that didn't work. And, I've got a bit of a bugger side of me. The boss was a bit of a prick, so I locked her in the shed and, got the sack. So it didn't really work for me very well. But what that did do, though, is it led me on a journey to, how am I going to heal from this? The next year I was offered to work with the Cancer Council running an event. What I learned from that was that altruistic deeds felt fantastic, and I suddenly realized that was my healing point, was to help others, and I had never before considered how fantastic that felt. So it took me 11 years to work out what I really wanted to do, and I was teaching people to work with people with disabilities, and I was teaching a lot of stuff. And then finally, because I was an expert on autism and behavior, I was working in schools, and they were saying, fix these kids. And it occurred to me at that point that we're so sort of stuck in a system that teaches us to compete. It teaches us that if we don't achieve a certain thing, we're failures, and this is where all this negative narrative comes from, is that we're, constantly feeling not good enough, and we're not the top of the class, therefore we can't do a podcast, or we can't run a business or something like that. And so it really, really hit hard to me. And that was when I wrote the book, Magnificent Kids. And one, I wanted to highlight the kids that were being told they were, broken, but they're not broken, but they were being told this. And also I had a bit of I still am an animal rights activist. And, I was sort of hitting heads, I guess, headbutting with people that are adults. I was trying to tell them that, we've got to be kinder to animals. We need a kinder world. And that wasn't going down too well. It was just sort of butting heads with people. And what I realized, that the kids were our future, and we need to teach kids how to think and not what to think. So one thing led to another, and that book ended up in the hands of a guy in Africa. He wanted to do a Skype project, he wanted to run a magnificent classroom, and I said, let's do a Skype project. And my whole idea was to send over laptops to Africa, and kids in Australia could Skype with kids in Africa. So I did that, and I set up One Planet Classrooms as a business because, and this is part of this entrepreneurial journey and making mistakes. And I love to talk about this because I screwed up terribly, and I think that people need to know that it's actually okay to fail, because that will lead to something better. So I decided that, I was going to send laptops over to Africa, and that didn't work. That was terrible. It took me months and months and months to finally send them over. But how I stuffed up was that I sent laptops to a country where 95% of them didn't even have power. So I don't know how I thought my Skype project was going to work. But not only that, the kids in Africa were in bed when the kids in Australia were at school. So it was never going to work. It was a gigantic failure. But what I did learn is I had 45 schools in Africa signed up within 2 weeks. And what I learned from talking to all these teachers is that these kids were dying from drinking dirty water, and also that girls were the fetchers of the water, and some were as young as 3 fetching water. And what was happening is they were being sexually assaulted on the way to the dirty water hole. So I decided I could either run with my tail between my legs and say that I was a failure, or I could pivot. And this is the beauty of, having a vision. My vision was to do one thing, but I pivoted it to do something else. And I learned that, I can put in water tanks in schools. And, specifically in Uganda, they don't have a water shortage. They have an infrastructure shortage. So I started putting water tanks into schools, and then solar systems, so that the kids could study, so that they could actually pass and go to secondary school and didn't have to get married off. And then I started doing women's empowerment projects and buying land and rebuilding schools and setting up an adult education program, and we also have a sponsorship program of about 140 kids. And it sounds, I'm so proud of this, but this would never have happened had I not failed, and it just wouldn't have happened. What I realized is I had a whole lot of money in the bank and I'd set up as a business, and I really needed to flip that over to a not-for-profit, and that was another learning curve. And the thing that I'm trying to get to help you with is all through this is that every single one of these things I didn't know what to do, and I didn't know how to start, and I didn't know what I was doing, and I learned on the way. And I don't have a degree in any of this stuff. I just had to learn it, and I think you've got to really back yourself and trust yourself that the answers will come as you need them, like they did for me. And I was very troubled by this gender issue, that girls were being married off and that they were sort of seen as less than, and I started to look at it, and I thought, well, it's not just Africa. This happens all around the world, and what can I do here? And I was sitting outside a hardware shop and I was looking at these flannelette shirts, and I thought, I wear them all the time. And I thought, that's what I need to do. I need to do something that shows girls that they don't have to be submissive to a stereotypical behaviors and sexualize themselves and that kind of stuff. So I thought I'll do Girls with Hammers. But in this time, it was just a pipe dream. It was something good. I thought I could go in there and into schools and help these girls. And so I sort of left that dormant. But in 2018, I was talking at an International Women's Day conference, and there were all these cards on the table. I will stick up for women. I will stand up for women. I'll speak up. And I thought they were a little bit lame. I was already an outspoken person. And then I saw one that said, I will launch a purposeful female-focused initiative. And I came home and I said to my partner, well, I've done it again. I've jumped up again. And it was kind of like, well, now's the time for Girls with Hammers. And so I went into some schools, and the teenagers really didn't take to that. So I failed again, and because that's what I thought was needed, but it didn't take. But what that led me to is to pivot again and to realize that I need to work with older women, 45 to 65, who feel disconnected. And so now we run conferences and events and hopefully retreats soon after COVID dies off. And this was to empower women, because there was a massive gap in women that felt completely powerless and, feeling like they're the only one and feeling alone and isolated. So we closed that gap, but that's not where I started. And, it's such an important thing to say, well, I've got an idea and I've got a vision, but you need to let that vision does need to move around a bit, and the goalposts move according to, what's out there and what's really needed. So I guess that, my next step was, I thought I'm going to I want to start a podcast. And I met this young man at a conference I was speaking at, and we both got excited. Let's do a podcast. Let's do a podcast. And we looked at each other and said, do you know how? No. Do you know how? No. And so then we went on this journey, and while we were supposed to be networking a conference, we're both on our phones looking up, recording like mixing desks and all sorts of stuff, because he was in Tasmania, I'm in Victoria, in two separate states, and we were trying to think, well, how do we get a guest on and how do we work this out? We eventually did it. It was a lot of hard work, having a co-host in another state. Not so much now, because Zoom's really kicked in, but it wasn't sitting there then, and the recording sound was absolutely terrible. So we couldn't do that. We were trying to do it through mixing desks, and it was really difficult. But the whole theme of that podcast, it was the Kerryn with Bumble show, and the whole theme of that was to, showcase stories of good, interview people who are doing good for the world, because at the end of the day, I don't care so much about money or business or podcasting or anything. What I care about is getting up every day to make a better world. So, I've realized that my strength is in empowering others and sharing stories of other people. Anyway, that didn't work either. That was another failure, because we couldn't maintain, doing it from two different states. And then came the conference where I did the workshop, wrote the book, Get Off the Bench, and that then, that was a book and it was workshops. And then I thought, well, you know what? The next step has to be a podcast. And all these people that I've worked with that I've helped to get off the bench, to get out there, to do a personal goal, a side hustle, or a community project, or a podcast, whatever. I needed to start showcasing other people who were doing these great things, so that people believe that they can. I thought if I showed examples of people doing it, other people would believe they could. So that was where the podcast come from. And I decided that I would launch it on the 1st of January, 2020, because I just thought let's just do a whole new decade, whole new start, do the podcast. Everything's going to be fantastic. But just a few weeks before that, 3 days before Christmas in 2019, another sister of mine, I did lose the first sister, by the way. That was about 18 years ago. Now, another sister had a cardiac arrest 3 days before Christmas. And we did save her. Her partner did do CPR. They took 2 hours to keep her alive. They put her in a coma, and she did survive with no brain damage. So it's what a Christmas miracle. But that really put me back, and I thought, well, I was consumed with that, and I thought, how can I do a podcast if that's happening around me? So then then came the bushfires, and for I guess we've got people all around the world here listening to this, but I'm in Victoria in Australia, and we had massive bushfires. It took out maybe half of Victoria, and so many animals were killed, and many people lost their lives, or not many, but some, and a lot of houses were destroyed and everything. My biggest thing was the animals, and there was 1 billion animals killed, and we lost koalas and all these slow moving animals. And me being an animal activist, I was so upset, so I applied for to work with an animal rescue team, and I was rejected. And when I look back now, it wasn't anything personal. I just didn't do a great submission, I guess. But there was another kick in the guts. So first my sister, then this, and plus I was devastated. So I became quite aggressive and quite. I lost the plot, really. It derailed me completely. And so my podcast was in the back of my mind, and I probably wasn't keen to do it. And then came COVID. So it was kind of like one thing after the other. And then I sat down and realized, in fact, my partner gave me a bit of a kick in the bum and said, you're so angry about all this, and you used to be able to help people, and now you're just sitting there like a big grumpy bum. What are you going to do? How are you going to channel this? And that was when I realized, what? I have to do the podcast. I've got a voice. The world, if I was feeling helpless, therefore I felt like unworthy, but the best way to feel worthiness was to actually do something good for the world. And there's a lot of people say, if you've got a void in your own life, do the thing, give the thing that you can't give, and that was this strength and this voice. And I decided, right, I'm just going to do the podcast. And I did. I set it up, started it in April, and I just thought, that's my way. That's my way, because I've got this skill and I've got this knack, and I can give something to the world, and I'm not unworthy, and I'm not helpless. So that's the story of all of that. I think that, so far there's been 55 episodes, and they've been absolutely fantastic. But, when I say fantastic, I'm not bragging about myself, but the fantastic guests, it's been incredible. And I think that, why I wanted to share all that with you is probably a little different to what everybody else has shared. But I think that, we too often I guess we doubt ourselves, and we think that, my life's not that interesting, and, I've got nothing to talk about. No one wants to hear me and everything else. But I think, I've had so many things go wrong and failures and everything else, but you always find a way around it. And I want everybody listening on here to, if you want to start a podcast, you just go and start your podcast. There's somebody out there needs your voice, and it's absolutely critical that you're shining your light on the world, because the more people that are shining their goodness and their light and their strengths and their magnificence and their unique talents on the world, the quicker we're going to reach a tipping point where this world gets out of chaos and actually starts caring about each other. And this is my thing that I'm so passionate about, and I just want to see everybody shine really brightly. There's 5 reasons that people don't get started, and I'll run through these, and then I want to give you a really quick mini get off the bench. So the 5 reasons are self-doubt, imposter syndrome, not knowing where to start, being overwhelmed by the big picture, and the last one is fear, and fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of criticism, all of those kind of things. Now, I'll give you a really quick rundown how to very quickly, how to overcome them. With self-doubt, think about this. Anything that you did in the past, any achievement, think about how you felt before it. You were absolutely shit scared. I'm anxious. I don't know. I can't do it, blah, blah, blah. You started to do it, and during it, you felt like, hey, I actually can do this. It's working. And then at the end of it, you're celebrating and saying, yeah, I did that thing. So anytime you have self-doubt, think about a past achievement and think about the fact that you did get through, you celebrated, and you are okay. Imposter syndrome is a massive one. It's where you think, who am I? No one's going to listen to me. I'm not qualified. They'll find out that I'm lying. You just negative narratives about yourself, and you feel like an imposter. And the best way to do that is to keep a folder, or to keep like a physical folder or a digital folder of any evidence that says you're not an imposter, anything that you've done. And it can just be writing down places that you've worked, people that have said things to you, anything like that. I keep a folder of all the talks I do around the world and all that kind of stuff. And every single day, I have imposter syndrome, a moment of it, and I need to get my book out and have a look. And I've done some amazing stuff, and I still face it every single day. So it's normal. Everyone has it. Not knowing where to start, it's just take action. Just take the first step. Work out what the first step is, which we're going to do in a minute, and then take action. And overwhelmed by the big picture, break it down into smaller chunks and start doing that. We're going to look at that too in a minute. And then fear of failure, rejection, or criticism. Well, the best antidote for fear is action. So just take action. So all of this stuff I'm telling you is just take action. And I think that we all have these battles. Like I said, I have imposter syndrome all the time, and I've been through all of these things, and I still go through all of these things very regularly. And it's my biggest thing, underlying problem is that I feel unworthy, and I'm always battling with that. And I know that's not true, but that happens to me. And we've all got some, destructive belief that's sitting below the surface, and we just have to know that it's a story we've told ourselves, and we have to just move through it. So I think let's do a little thing that you can do. So with the other thing I want to say just before that is that I also run a leadership program called Elevate Your Genius. And why I'm saying that is because when we want to be a leader, or when we want to do something, anything, what we do is we say there's no room for me. How am I going to do that? Or I need to wait for somebody to offer something, or I need to wait for a position to become available. Or we're always doing that. We're always waiting for a space to open up for us, at the mercy of somebody else. And why I do this Elevate Your Genius is that I get people to draw what they want their future to look like. And the reason I draw it is because it's something like 66% more likely to achieve it if you draw it in pictures. So I get people to draw it. And basically what I'm saying to people is you create your own positioning. So whether that's a podcaster, whether that's a leader, whether that's a new business, whatever it is, you make the space, find the space, you do it yourself and don't wait for anybody else. You find that space, put your stake in the ground and step into that space, and you own it. And that is creating positioning for yourself in that space, and nobody else can take that space. That's yours. You own it. You can promote it. You can share it. You can build it any way you like, because that is your space. So I want you to think about that, because I want you to step into your space. So let's do a really quick mini get off the bench. What you need to do is think about your idea. What is the idea that you want to do? And, it could be, like I said, a personal goal, a community project, a side hustle, podcast, that kind of stuff. I'm going to focus on podcasts just for the next couple of minutes. So think about your idea, think about the vision. What is the, write that down. What is the vision that you would like to see? Where would you like to see it go? What's the audience? What's your message? What's the outcome that you hope from that? Think about your why, and your why will be about your messaging. Why are you doing this? And not just because I want to start a podcast. It'll be because I believe in that kind of stuff. So your why is the thing that drives you. It's the thing that keeps you going. It's the thing that keeps you focused. And by the way, you'll get a lot of people, if you set up a podcast, you're going to get a lot of people wanting to be guests, and a lot of people wanting to be guests are not relevant to your message, and they just want to be on a podcast. So you need to be very sure about your why and very sure about your message, because other people will hijack you, they will derail you, and they will pull you off your pathway. So be very, very sure about what it's about. You can pivot, but you make sure you're the one that pivots, not guests pulling you off the side. Think about what's in the way. Those are the things I talked about before. Is it self-doubt, imposter syndrome, overwhelmed by the big picture, don't know where to start, or fear? Think about those things and be honest with yourself. And if they are stopping you, start to do the things that I said before. Think about it, that it's just a negative narrative. It's internal commentary that we've decided on some story for ourselves, and we believe it's true. And there's that old saying, don't believe everything you think. And that's a really good one. If it's knowledge gaps, knowledge or skills, just find those things out. Like, the internet is incredible to find stuff out. So if there's a gap of skill, knowledge, fix that. Just step into that and fill it up and get it done right. Look at your resources. To start a podcast, you need very, very few resources. You need a laptop and a platform, recording platform. If you've got a Mac, might be GarageBand. If you've got a PC, it could be Audacity. They're both free. They both come with it. Well, Audacity's free. GarageBand comes with a Mac. You need a microphone, and don't get a shitty $2 one, but you can get one that's under $100. You can even use, I've seen lots of people using the normal, the head things. You just got to get a good sound it's audible enough that won't put people off. And a recording platform, like Zoom to record guests. That's coming up okay now, Zoom. So you've already got all the stuff you need right there. But then you've got to look at a platform to host the podcast and then put it out to Apple and Stitcher and Spotify and what have you. I'm not going to go into that. You need to look it up. If you just look up how to start up a podcast, you're going to get so much information. There's this summit that you're listening to now. There are stacks of YouTube clips, how to start a podcast, and you just got to follow step by step by step, and you will do it. So then think about the 5 big picture things that you've got to do. So it might be start a website, it might be get guests, it might be design my artwork, it might be work out how to put stream it to Apple or whatever, and write those things across the top of a page, and then underneath it break it down into smaller chunks. So what you'll find is you'll get this whole big mess out of your head. You're going to get it onto paper, and yes, there'll be a lot of things written there, but once they're written down, you can tick them off one by one, and it is not as hard as you think. But the thing is, you need to do is decide on the first step. What is the very first thing I need to do? And it might just be get on the computer and research, how do I set up a podcast? Or it might be, ringing somebody. It might be booking one guest and opening GarageBand and recording them, or Zooming them and recording them. Just start, because if you don't start, you will never get it done. And once you start, it just goes and goes and goes, and you just take one step at a time, and you will build your podcast. One thing I would say, and everybody's probably already told you this, make sure you've got 4, 6 or 8 episodes already there, already pre-recorded before you start, just to give yourself a bit of a head start. So That's it for me. I just really want to encourage you to think about my journey, think about your own journey. Nobody is an overnight success. It takes a lot, to get things done. And basically just get off the bench, just get started. So that's it for me. And thank you so much and good luck.